Staying with Morning Express. In case you're just joining us, I'm Jesse Rogers, 35 minutes per 6 a.m. And we want to get to the nitty-gritty details about the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020. Of course, the referendum has become a reality now, as proponents of the handshake and the BBI celebrate crossing the 24 county assemblies mark required for the BBI bill to proceed to the next stage. Now, as of today morning, a total of 38 county assemblies have endorsed the bill, with only one against it, and yet 8 others are set to debate and vote. Let's take a look at that report prepared by George Maringa on that particular day that was dubbed as Super Tuesday.
It had been christened the Super Tuesday, and with good reason. For the key players, county assemblies across the country, the in-tray was full. And so the much-awaited Tuesday came. Starting early morning, one after another, county assemblies tabled and debated the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2020, with MCAs clearly determined to stand up and be counted. Not even a blackout to hold debate in Nyandarua County. All eyes were on the mountain to see how they would vote for the bill, following assertions that the bill would be a hard seller in the president's backyard. From slopes of Meru County to the plains of Kirinyaga, Nyeri and other counties from Central, it was a unanimous yes.
People have seen today Mount Kenya voting as one block. Kirinyaga has voted unanimously, other counties have voted unanimously. I said it before, I will say it again. You can rent a Kikuyu, but you cannot buy a Kikuyu.
Nilikuja mapema na speaker kwanza hata alifika mbele yangu, lakini sisi saa 3 tulikuwa hapa kwa sababu sisi tumeokoka. BBI sisi tumeokoka kama vile tunaokokanga kutafuta ufalme wa mbinguni.
We are going to appeal to our members of parliament. I think the senator is with us, so that we move as one team. But if they resist, they will have to follow the 190, because we shall move with the 190.
The same was witnessed in the northern Kenya counties as well. As of Tuesday evening, 38 counties had voted yes to the bill. They are Siaya, Homa Bay, Kisumu, Busia, West Pokot, Trans Nzoia, Kajiado, Kisii, Vihiga, Nairobi, Laikipia, Samburu, Kakamega, Narok, Mombasa, Makueni, Kitui, Machakos, Lamu, Murang'a, Nyeri, Nyandarua, Kirinyaga, Bungoma, Nyamira, Garissa, Meru, Nakuru, Tharaka Nithi, Taita Taveta, Kwale, Migori, Kiambu, Bomet, Marsabit, Isiolo, Embu and Tana River. As expected, ODM leader Raila Odinga was ecstatic. He took to social media and lauded the MCAs for swimming against the tide of misinformation, lies and undue influence. Baringo Senator Gideon Moi also took to Twitter congratulating Bomet County for the BBI victory. But in a fresh twist of events, a section of Baringo MCAs now say they regret rejecting the BBI bill. Speakers of county assemblies will now proceed as required by law to notify their counterparts in the National Assembly and the Senate as the bill now takes its next steps.
All right, that report by George Maringa just hinting at the progress that was made just yesterday. Of course, more counties joining the foray of those who had already given a nod to the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. Let's just take a look at how it all broke down nationally. Various counties, starting with Siaya County, passed the bill over to Homa Bay, Kisumu, Busia, West Pokot, and the likes. This was the very first one. So far, only one county has actually voted in opposition of the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. Baringo, of course, an issue still in front of the courts, but that is a breakdown of the counties that have so far voted yes, reaching the minimum requirement, the threshold of 24 counties. As you can see, 38 so far. Let's cross over to some of the counties that are yet to vote on this particular bill, some conducting public participation as it is. We have Kilifi County, Uasin Gishu, Nandi, Elgeyo Marakwet, Turkana, Kericho, Mandera and Wajir that have not yet voted to this bill. But remember, it's inconsequential. This will still roll out to the two houses of Parliament, the National Assembly and the Senate, in order to seek amendments to at least 58 articles of the Constitution, but at least 10 of them definitely need to go via the popular initiative known as the referendum. So that's just a breakdown of the latest in terms of the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. And just to hint, I'm still joined by our panelists in studio. Martha Wangari, who's a Member of Parliament for Gilgil constituency, is still with us. PMG Njuguna, who's a political commentator, is with us in studio. Joining us via way of Zoom, Bunyasi Sakwe, who's a Member of Parliament for Nambale constituency, as well as Musari Kahiga, who's a public policy analyst, joining us from our city center studios. Gentlemen and lady, many thanks for your patience right here. Now let's shift focus and talk about this particular issue. I know you all mentioned that it wasn't a surprise at all, bearing in mind the necessity of passing this bill in the county assemblies. I just want your quick reaction, and I'll start with you, Martha Wangari, on the process right now as it is. Do you actually foresee a tough time for the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020 in Parliament? Remember, it is going to both the houses. So if one of the house definitely doesn't pass this bill, it will be detrimental. Talk to us about this.
Thank you. And I think, allow me to, first of all, honorably disagree with my colleague Njuguna on the issue of the mountain, because I think it's important.
Okay.
We cannot be proponents of Article 10 for inclusivity and Article 27 non-discrimination, and then tell a young person from Gatanga, where he comes from, or Gilgil, because their name is Kamau or Wangari, cannot run, because we need to give it to someone else. I think the Constitution has clear guidelines on how we elect our president.
Yes. And
all you need to do is convince more than 50% of the population. It doesn't matter where you come from.
All right.
And I think that is important that we put it on record. The other issue of BBI, I think we are in agreement that one day in politics is quite a long time.
Sure.
In fact, for people who are fighting BBI, now they are a bit quiet because they wonder now, what do you say? Because MCAs are the grassroots protectors and representatives of the people. And they have passed that in excess of 24. And like I had said earlier, it now doesn't matter. And even, I would say, if I were, say, the deputy president right now, I would ensure that a county like Uasin Gishu, Nandi, and Kericho vote yes. It's very important, not just for the numbers, because the numbers we already have, but I think to be in the right side of history, that they also understand exactly what BBI means. And I say that because there is no proper ward representative who will refuse to have a separate ward development fund. And I think the BBI proponents were very clear in terms of putting low-hanging fruits. And I know some have said, oh, they have been bribed with car grants. And I was a senator last parliament. And we sat in 2016, we actually passed that MCAs, like we get car grants, should be able to get car grants. And I think it's not a new thing. And for any member of parliament to actually fight that, I think it's being hypocritical, because even us, we got car grants. So I think that cannot be called a bribe. It's been a process that has been there. But more importantly, the issue of separation, that you don't have to beg the governor to get some bridge done, to get some road done, to get a dispensary equipped, I think the separation will be very critical. And it's one of the things that MCA saw in this bill. So I think in terms of the process,
yes,
I think it's already evident. The country is green. So now we go to the next step. And I think the people who were fighting it earlier were what we call in Kikuyu jumping before the drum, because this process has a way it is done legally. So now after there, it will be submitted to Parliament. I don't think we'll have many issues in Parliament. Of course, we don't agree. There are people who don't agree at all.
True.
There are people who have not read. But I hope at the end of the day, we'll be able to make a decision. But it does not matter. Whatever decision we make as Parliament, this BBI amendment bill touches on the Bill of Rights. It touches on the judiciary, especially the issue of the ombudsman. So under Article 255, it goes to a referendum. So it's just a matter of time, and it can be debated concurrently through the two houses, then submitted to the president. The president will then write to the IEBC chairman in terms of committing it to a referendum within 90 days, and then we'll have him assent it later after.
Okay.
It is passed.
Bunyasi Sakwa, let me bring you in also as a member of parliament as we talk about the next process of this particular referendum journey. Talk to us about what is likely to play out in both houses of parliament and also the likelihood of this ending with the president just assenting to this, because other voices have also come up mentioning that it totally isn't a must for it to go through the popular initiative. I know Martha Wangari has alluded to the fact that it touches on various articles, 251, 255, 1 of the Constitution. Talk to us about this.
First of all, a couple of comments. One, the process at the level of the counties, my colleague, Honorable Martha Wangari, said the issue of bribe and so on doesn't apply. Probably that's not entirely accurate. The timing of the agreement that they will get the allowances coincidentally very close to the decision making. Of course, the guys who are there now, people who are there now as MCAs may not all be the major beneficiaries. The next generation will, if those who come back and those will be new. There's some public policy processes there. There was some inducement, so to say. But be that as it may, it has embedded one element in our devolution, that in fact county governments are important, and I hope that they realize their importance in our governance systems. And I want to load the counties that took a bit of time to debate this, even if they're going to say yes, because that's how you make a judicious judgment. In Parliament, both in the Senate and National Assembly, it will be a breeze. Parliament has been reduced to a point of generally agreements, and I can take that to the bank. There's going to be no resistance. There'll be a bit of noises made during presentations, but it's going to pass overwhelmingly. The realignment that have been done have brought out a tremendous amount of, agreement across the major political parties. Jubilee and ODM now are working closely together. They're a majority in Parliament. I don't expect any resistance. Other parties, my own party and so on, have signed on. Parliament and Senate will produce nothing new. We just a question of time. Not on this issue, not this time around. And I just hope as I conclude, Jesse, looking at the broad picture of where Kenya is heading in terms of the depth of political maturity, the development of political maturity, I think that it's times like this that we should allow free discussion. For example, the Mount Kenya people caused their party leader, Jubilee party leader, and the President of the Republic to sit down with them because they felt that he had been ignoring them. That's part of the political process. And they bargained and they agreed. And it wasn't for nothing the president took time out of it. It was to get them to do something. And they have succeeded. They have done something. That's how nationally this process should continue. And to the extent that there are regions that are unable to do that, they will lag behind for that reason. The extent that there is a sort of appearance of a hold on power, a monopolistic hold on power, it will create tensions in this country. Okay. That's why when they talk about the leaders can come from anywhere, not just two, they should not just be two. Let us remember that beyond winning within components, there is a holding together of the rest of it. And I think that's going to be a delicate process. We need statesmen to lead for us to get there.
All right. Well, many thanks, Bunyasi Sakwa. Let me get the comments of Musari Kahiga first before we cross over to Njuguna right now. And I'd like to bounce off the point of the suspect timing of the car grants, the niceties that were dangled in front of the MCAs from the Ward Development Fund, 5% of it going to the wards. Talk to us about this. Do you read anything malicious in terms of some of the niceties that were put forth to the members of County Assembly, even before we get to discuss the members of the public themselves?
Jesse, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being nice to MCAs. The niceties involved, but there's nothing wrong with being nice to MCAs. I want to put forward this, that the constitutional amendment and the referendum that is pending is a political process, and politics is part of this process, because you have to convince nearly every single Kenyan to either vote yes or no, and first of all, come out to vote. So it's a political process. So it should not be anything new that there will be political movements, realignments, and inducements during a time like this. What is clear is that when it comes to the substance of BBI, and that is the constitutional amendment that is proposed here, is that we have a very clear direction from grassroots leaders from across the country. Jesse, as I was looking at your map there, I mean, 3/4 of the country is already green. We only have a single spot of no in Baringo, and as you said, that's already in court. So the councillors, the MCAs, the grassroots leaders are reaching out to the parliamentarians and telling them that qua ground, mambo ni different. Actually, people are pro-BBI.
Well, that's interesting. PMG Njuguna, you mentioned you come from the Mount Kenya region, and that has been a common analogy that has been peddled around the BBI and the constitutional amendment bill, that the ground is volatile. Speak to us about this, even as we appreciate the fact that members of parliament and members of Senate will actually play their part, but eventually it will come to the common mwananchi. So let's speak truth to this. What say you?
Thank you. Even before I head there, are we heading towards uncontested referendum? When you have 3/4 of the country agreeing on one thing, they are likely to push or to pull the other 1/4. The Deputy President wishes has always been that we move to uncontested referendum. I have been listening to social media, and he said at one time to have talked to his tribesmen and told them, it does not affect me. Whether it is not voted for or whether it is voted for, if it was voted for, I will benefit. I will dish to my friends this and that and that. Which means that the contentious structural recommendation, he is going to sell it to his people. And Central Province was also against the structured parliamentary system and leadership of this country. But these provisions we were overridden by the provisions of cash. The money factor was extremely attractive.
Yeah.
So where are we moving to? We are moving to a thorough and deep understanding and analysis of the BBI. I was one of the people who talked to residents of Kandara, and I had only 1 hour to do it.
Okay.
And what the people understood most is what is coming to you. I told our people that you are not going to become a prime minister, nor are you going to become a deputy prime minister. So you are not going to become an MP. What is in the BBI for you? I also told them that BBI is a negotiated process. There are some people in this country who want a prime minister and that system.
Okay.
And there is you who is getting 4.9 billion. So that it is the youth that is being covered. It is the process of training. It is the process of talking the truth within the BBI that is going to change literally everything. I'm inviting you to a thinking that we are going to have uncontested referendum.
Okay, even as you talk about that thinking, allow me to cut you short. You've talked about the money factor, and I mean, this is a major selling point vis-a-vis the challenge of the wage bill, expanded executive, even though we're talking about more representation in terms of the constituencies. I mean, the bigger elephant in the room would be the wage bill and the cost to the Kenyan taxpayer. Is this a necessary thing to go forth?
I don't think so. I literally don't think so. If you want to know whether a Kikuyu is dead or alive, go to the mortuary and drop a shilling. What am I saying? This is an economy where you work. We are a commercial economy. We are not a socialist.
Okay.
So that, what are the roots? If the MP for Juja, not for Juja, my friend Wakapi, Roiro, has got 200,000 votes, and Duare has got 20,000 votes. Duare is getting a CDF of 130 million. Not counting Youth Fund, not counting Uwezo Fund, not counting other. We are saying one member of parliament, how much does one consume in a year? If you are going to get 100 million, how much is that member of parliament going to get?
All right.
Probably 12 million. Subtract 100 million from 12, what are you going to gain as a constituency? 80-something million.
Okay. So one way or the other, there's more money to counties. Martha Wangari, as you pick up on that particular point.
It is the analysis of what is coming, yes.
Okay. As you pick up on that point and talk about the issue of more money to counties, I'd also want to engage you on what exactly is happening in Parliament, because we have the option of the multiple choice referendum that is being fronted by those who are aligned to Deputy President William Ruto, and they insist that it remains the best option for voters to allow them to choose the good things that they think is within the constitutional amendment bill and reject those that don't make sense. Speak to us about it and the two referendum bills in Parliament.
First of all, I want to agree with Njuguna in terms of representation.
Okay.
And I think being a political process, there are issues that were even raised at the Bomas 1, and after the bill came out, were incorporated. I know some of the issues that were raised, like I will tell you one specific one. There was the issue of Nairobi being left to the national government, and the leadership opposed it. And at the end of it, it was removed.
Okay.
So there were areas where there was negotiation. I was in a meeting called by the president in Naivasha at some point. We had issues with women representation, and it has been incorporated in the bill. So it has been a process. And at the end of the day, I would not tell you that I agree 100%. Even the ward reps will not tell you they agree 100%. But you look at what is more. You put on a scale what is bigger. Is it your problems or the good things? And I think that is where the yes, you see the country turning green. That is why, and I want to tell you, in this process, the most important person was actually the ward rep. Not even the MP, not the senator, for it to even get to a referendum. That is why you'll see the goodies, you'll see the incentives, and it is a political process, you expect it, because I would look at what is my interest. And I think the ward reps looked at the Ward Development Fund, they looked at ward MCAs becoming CECs, because the bill says not more than half will come from assembly. So they want someone they would talk to, like we would have in parliament, the parliaments that were there before, that you have a CS, you have a minister sitting in parliament. You're able to ask them questions. Because one of the issues we've suffered with this setup of having technocrats to be CSs, to be CECs, is that first of all you vet them, then they become inaccessible. You're not able to ask them questions. You ask a question in parliament. I'll tell you, like now I asked a question yesterday on the demolitions that were done in Gilgil. It will take a month before it's even answered. And the CS will come to the committee, not to the House. So the idea is very attractive. And I think that is why you see most of them responding. And that is why I say the most important people here were the MCAs. And they knew it. And this was the right time to push anything that was pending before. I mean, it would have been unfair if they let it just go and they had something that could get out of it. But I think going forward, the issue of Parliament, we have a referendum bill that we are debating. And this bill that is from the county assemblies won't be the end of it. If you look at the schedule, it has a schedule that gives how many months do we take to enact other laws, because we'll need supporting legislation. Some are 1 year, some are 6 months, you know, so that we operationalize it. So it will not be the end by itself. Parliament still has a role to play. The issue of multiple question referendum, I think even the AG has said it's not impossible. I don't know whether it has been done in other countries.
It's not possible, rather.
He has said it's not impossible.
Impossible,
It is not impossible. And I say that because there are areas you'll get that one has issues with the Senate being expanded, but is okay with MC, is okay with the ward fund, is okay with a few other issues. But I think it will be complicated, because if you look at even other countries, even the Brexit, which was a very famous referendum, it is usually a yes or a no question, so that it's easier. Because even in 2010, we also had a yes. In 2005, we also had a yes and a no. It's easier. But I think it's not impossible. But IEBC has also raised and said it's going to be complicated.
And cumbersome.
So I think at the end, and cumbersome. But some have also argued that in an election, we elect 6 people. So it's also possible. But who is going to read all that, the questions for the people? But I think going forward, I think the secret will be to look at what is more. Is it the good or the bad? Yeah.
Definitely. Sakwa Bunyasi, speak to us about this option of the multiple choice referendum bill. But even as you do so, I'd like to ask you a political question. The proponents of the BBI, the writers of this Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020, did they capture the imagination of the masses from your perspective? Because either way, if it gets to a referendum, the masses will definitely have their way. Talk to us about this.
Jesse, I think we lost an opportunity along the way. This whole thing began with a handshake, and many people were eagerly looking forward to the dividend, and I think we have had the handshake dividend, which is a very good thing. Then it sort of transformed itself into a popular process that is going to completely overhaul our constitution. Initially, people had misgivings about how the overhauling of the entire constitution is going essentially to be predicated on the agreement of two gentlemen, a non-written agreement of two gentlemen. And people felt that it should come in. And there was some resistance, as has been outlined. But along the line, some changes have been made quietly and reluctantly, but they have been made. Beyond the bomb, as what the current draft, as Honorable Martha Wangari has outlined, there are a number of changes that have been made. It wasn't publicized that changes were being made, but they were made by progressive. That was a good thing. But I think that given where we are now in the process, many of these questions are moot. Even the referendum is simply because it is a necessary step in the process.
All right.
As I said earlier, it will pass, and it will pass overwhelmingly for various reasons that have already been put in place. Now, I think the thing to look at in a multiple or not multiple referendum would be this, for example. We have two major areas of change. One is focusing on the devolved units and devolution, where the increased allocations are going to go, and there are other things that have been offered in the devolved process, including the ward funds and so on, which, by the way, from a governance point of view, will be extremely problematic to oversight. But that's what it is. That's one area. And people can vote or not, whether to agree with that or not. The second area is the huge umbrella top that we have got of a big bureaucracy that we're creating right at the national level. Those things are not interrelated. You can make the changes at the devolution side, and you may not need to make the changes at the top. You may agree with the changes at the top and not the one at the bottom. So there are broad choices that can be made.
All right.
I think to say that it's complicated is simply because the proponents were afraid that that kind of thing may lose the message, and you could lose the process by trying to open it up for people to focus deeply inside. I don't think it's impossible. I think we underrate the capacity of the ordinary person to think through these things. And yet there are our pillars and there are our base. I think they can think through it. But the way we're headed, we are not going to go to a multiple referendum. We are going to go to a single question referendum.
Okay, allow me to still ask you a question. Just yesterday, Martha Karua, one of the individuals fronting the Linda Katiba, which is actually putting their foot down and saying no to this Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020, mentioned this, Sakwa Bunyasi. She said, she alluded to the fact that perhaps the 35%, yes, it was proper in terms of devolved funds to the counties, but it might be a problem for the next administration in the current economic environment that we have as a country. Would you agree with this fact that we might be creating problems in terms of achieving this 35%?
Yeah, I think it will be a challenge, but from the way they have worked the numbers, it will be doable. What has happened, remember that in 2015, when the Ugatuzi came, I think it was sometime in July or something, it seemed to people as if it was sudden, and the Transitional Authority had been working on some arrangements of how the transfer duties would be done, but that was incomplete. There was quite a bit of devolved functions that remained at the headquarters, particularly in the Ministry of Health, but in other areas as well. All areas, even whether it's agriculture, whatever that was devolved, retained certain things at the national level, and not because those were of a national nature necessarily. There was reluctance to devolve all of it. So what has happened is, there is a proposal which was agreed, and that's how the president broke the stalemate last year, that part of that money, which is along the path for devolution, but had remained in the headquarters, and it should not be in the headquarters, would be moved to the counties. That's part of what's counting towards the 35%. From that perspective, there's no new money being sent to no new money in the economy that's being created sent to the counties. It's money that the counties ought to have received. So that will count towards the 35. When that has stabilized, when that has become part and parcel of the devolved unit, that's when we shall now begin to hit the new frontier of additional funding that we may need.
All right.
But as it is now, you can achieve that simply by moving funds at the national level that should have gone down. I don't. There's a tendency to build things around money.
Okay.
National institutions have increased their budgets when they should have been reducing their budgets in favor of counties. So I think it will be. That's an easy answer.
Okay.
Now.
Okay.
But just before I conclude, Jesse,
briefly,
our economic times are not good now. It's very hard now as it is, and just funding our development altogether is going to be a big challenge. Not impossible. That's what finance ministers do. So I think when the time comes, they will juggle things, and something must give way. It be able to meet this constitutional threshold. That may not be a bad idea, because getting money to the grassroots is not a bad idea at all. It may inspire development.
Okay.
There may be perhaps less theft than there is at the national level. And if there is theft, it will remain within the rural economy and may still grow that rural economy.
All right, Sakwa Bunyasi. Let's cross over to the other contributors. PMG Njuguna, what say you about this issue about money following functions? But even as you speak about it, I'd like you to give us your take on the argument that an expanded executive will not cure the winner-take-it-all electoral system. Talk to us about this.
If you look at the current constitution, Section 4, Part 1, the factions of the government are actually 35. And if you look at Part 2, Section 4 of the county government factions, they are actually 14. Out of the 35 factions of the national government, most of them are actually policy-oriented. So that the expenditure and implementation of government decisions, or rather projects, developmental projects, are not with the central government.
Okay.
They will be more effective done at the implement. There is not a single faction in county government that is involved in policy. All of them are implementing the government policy. I agree with Mother Karua, respected reader. And we are not taking 35 from extra funds. We are reducing the government funds so that the argument that there will be no money does not hold water. If we get the 10% of the national, like now we are going through a stressful economic process.
Yeah.
What we are going to get is the 35 that is going to go to the county government.
All right.
So the lunacy of the county government is there, of course. And I'm happy, even members of parliament will tell you, the MCAs cry to them, you have to kneel down before the governor for you to have a developmental project in your own ward.
In your ward, yes.
Now, they are power. That's why no governor in Kenya will be impeached. In fact, impeachment is a political process. It is not a logical process.
Okay.
Governors that are still in office, what happens is that the ability to belong to the, but I agree also that there are some few amendments that should have come with this BBI. For example, this person called the controller of budget. The controller of budget and the auditor general, I call them pathologists. They simply come to tell us what has killed the economy. How will you allow somebody to steal 9 billion shillings and then come to investigate him after 9 years,
all right,
after 5 years?
Okay.
So that I agree, there is a clause within the BBI that says after every 3 months, periodical checking by the controller of budget.
Budget, yes.
So that parliament has no power over members or over governors.
Okay.
It is a good process, but again, I challenge the members of parliament. There are necessary registrations. For example, checking the performance of every county government. They pass the budget. So how are they involved in ensuring that governments do not misuse those provisions?
Okay. I'd still want to pick your mind on the expanded executive and the winner take it all. Is it a cure for this electoral system? Briefly, PMG Njuguna.
Number one, it is not expensive. It is a lie. You see, they will tell us that it is so expensive, the punda imechoka. But I want to ask them, what is the current percentage of the registration in both counties? The expenses of both registration at county levels and registration at the national level. It is less than 2%.
Okay.
What is the percentage that has been added? What percentage of money that is going through corruption and misuse and abuse? So that it will get in, as I said, the Constitution is not devoid of reason.
Okay.
It is not devoid of common sense. It is not devoid of, like now the courts Are you telling me the courts are going to nullify a process where the whole country agrees? The courts are not devoid of common sense. They are not devoid of reason. So what is going to happen is that when you expand the executive, what is the emotional satisfaction that comes with it? Just people want to hear, my man is the president.
All right.
That's why I'm saying.
Okay.
It is lack of that expenditure is death and destruction.
All right. Let's cross over to...
The Kikuyus died 1,200.
Okay.
650. Why? Because of an accommodating institutional structures that govern the country. Yeah, that's why I'm saying, I like Odiga when he said there must be rotational president of 5 years. Because you cannot continue with rotational president for two tribes.
We will talk about that later on. I'm sure Martha Wangari has something to say. But let's cross over to Musari Kahiga on this particular issue. Musari, talk to us about the money factor, the 35%. You've heard what the fellow contributors had to say. But even as you do that, the argument on the expanded executive and whether it totally cures the winner-take-it-all electoral system.
Jesse, thank you. I want to start from two areas, and I might go back a bit. First of all, if you'd allow me to delve into the issue on the multiple choice question, just for a second. I think the Deputy President's handlers, at some point, need to determine whether it is wise to keep carrying out political maneuvers that continue to make him look like an incorrigible political delinquent. You know, we can't come from a place where you say you don't want the BBI at all. Wewe hutaki, hakuna kitu, tunataka kupatiana wheelbarrow. You wake up the next morning, now the BBI is not too bad. And then when it comes to next week, well, now maybe we should have a multiple choice around in the BBI. It can't work. Any Kenyan in this country has a right to draw a bill, to draft, to go and change the constitution. William Ruto and his Tangatanga Brigade they have that option. They can change the constitution at any time, so long as Kenyans agree. BBI, Kenyans have agreed. When it comes to the 35%, Jesse, I think perhaps Madam Martha Karua is being a bit short-handed in her understanding of the mathematics. Definitely PNG is right here. We're talking about reducing the amount of funds at the executive and actually pushing it down and making sure that there's a trickle down of funds to the grassroots, which is actually the problem of the Kenyan economy, that too much of the GDP is concentrated within just 2 cities or 3. We need to take it down to the grassroots. There has to be political activity. Every Kenyan and every single element of this country is a going concern. It's a profitable center, whether it's human capital or land capital, and we must all work together to activate this. BBI captures that. Now, when it comes to your question, Jesse, on whether the changes to the expanded executive completely solve the tensions and ethnic division that is there after every election, well, they might not completely solve, but they are the first step we have had as a country to have an inclusive and national outlook at the executive level. This is a step forward. We cannot deny this. And if we talk about the expense of that so-called expanded executive, Jesse, you're more aware than I that the funds which were nicked off at Amoror Kimirere Dam are far more than enough to pay for that expanded executive for the next 50, 70 years. Sasa kwa kiturudishia pesa, we should be okay to fund the executive. But in the absence of that, Kenyans are moving on with or without them.
Okay, interesting sentiments right there. Martha Wangari, as you add your voice to that, and still on the issue about 35%, I mean, many might argue that the development expenditure within the counties is, needless to say, shortcoming, kidogo. They barely hit 50%. So we're taking more money to these counties. They might have issues with devolved corruption. Talk to us about the accountability aspect and making sure that money is not just used in recurrent expenditure, but also in terms of development expenditure and a proper percentage on this.
First of all, I think it's unfortunate that we reduce this conversation to William Ruto or to whoever it is, that we reduce it to one person. And the fact that you're speaking about him even in this show, it means then he has something to say and he's a voice. Otherwise, he'll be ignored. But I think tying it to one person is unfortunate. And this is a conversation that is national. And even he will have a vote to actually cast as a voter of this country.
Yes.
So I think it's good to respect everybody. I also disagree with Njuguna on rotational presidency. I've said it before, let everyone offer their candidacy. Let us vet. The people are sovereign. Article 1 of the Constitution, and the thresholds are clear. The issue of representation, and I know this has been said, like 70 more constituencies. Like I said, it's an evolving process. Initially, when we were in Naivasha, these 70 seats were to be like, they were in the air. They were not to go through delimitation of boundaries.
Okay.
And we said it will bring conflict because you cannot have 2 MPs in one constituency who starts where. It will bring conflict. And I think the one thing they have done, I will tell you for sure, I represent 90,000 people. Jane Kihara of Naivasha represents 145,000 people. There is someone who represents 15 or 18,000 people in parliament.
Yes.
We get the same allocation. I have 120 schools. I try to bring infrastructure. Someone else has 10 in Nairobi or in somewhere else. They build story houses, story schools, and people wonder if we are taking ourselves, are we implementing the same? Yeah. But in terms of scarcity of resources, we are thin. So I would say if Nakuru gets 5 constituencies, why would I not support that? Because we suffer because we have many people and they expect services, and there are other people who are fewer, and we get 1 vote each in parliament. So the cost of representation cannot be higher than that of lack of representation. And the issue of seats, I think we have said it before. First of all, the issue of what, the winner takes it all, how BBI will address it. The office of the leader of opposition is very key. Because how it is, the current constitution right now, you'll get someone like Honorable Raila Odinga. Last time he got his 6 million or his 47% of the country, and he's left in the cold.
Okay.
Is that a good thing? No, because earlier he would run as the MP for Langata and still run as president.
Okay.
So if he lost the presidency, he would become the MP. But in our scenario right now, he cannot run as an MP and run as the president. So I think how it will address it is the official leader of opposition sitting in parliament and being recognized, having an office, because he commands some I would say, good percentage of the country. That brings now what we call tranquility. And that's why the handshake was born, because he was out there with his supporters. Every Monday in Nairobi, there were demonstrations. And the people who suffered, I will tell you, are the business people, are the people who are doing their normal businesses. Schools were disrupted. So I think it is a good thing going forward that we accommodate these people inside some framework that is legally acceptable. The issue of 35%, and I think this is very critical. And some people have argued, even the way it is right now, it says not less than 15%.
Yes.
But it's good that you don't leave it to chance.
It's anchored in law.
You actually anchor it in the law.
Okay.
And the challenge will be, there are some functions that were devolved and monies were not devolved. I will pick health and agriculture. The percentages of monies that are left with the ministry are still so high, and yet these functions are devolved.
Okay.
So the challenge would be actually to release in Nairobi. Let us stop this centralization of kukwamilia in Nairobi. Let the functions that are devolved get the money devolved, so that the people of Nakuru can enjoy good health, can enjoy a good PGH in Nakuru. The people of Gilgil can get a good health facility with the money. But without the money, then it becomes a problem. The issue of utilization of the monies. The problem in this country, by the way, is not the laws. We have them. In fact, we have some of the best laws in this country. The PFM Act 2012 outlines that every county government should utilize at least 30% of its monies to actually go to development. But how many counties are doing that? I think the implementation is a problem.
So how do we address this, even with more money going to counties?
For one, the issue of oversight is very critical. What Njuguna spoke about, the MCAs must have some autonomy.
All right.
You see, like Parliament has. Parliamentary Service Commission has its own budget. We do not go to the president or to the executive to ask for that money. So if we fail in oversight, it is us failing. But the counties is very tricky. The county assembly has a bit of the money, but they still have to go to the governor for development. And I will tell you, not many people understand the issue of legislature and oversight. They understand our bridge in Kanorero, has it been fixed? Our bridge in some village, has it been fixed?
Simple,
A road,
okay.
that is what translates to development. So I think
Okay.
that separation of powers
Yeah.
will help. And the BBI has also spoken about the Senate having an expanded oversight mandate of oversighting the revenue of the counties. As it is right now, they were only oversighting the money that has been taken through the county allocation. But now they will have an expanded mandate to actually also oversight on the monies that are in the revenue collected by the counties.
Okay. Sakwa Bunyasi, you can bounce off that point around issues of oversight and autonomy, touching on proper expenditure of these resources that we're hailing as a good injection to the devolved functions.
Let me just start there. I had the question on whether the changes would help the issue of the problem we have, the real problem we have had, on whether one person, a winner take all, will be resolved or not. That I don't think that this will resolve it. This is just it's sidelining. It's moving on the side, it's not tackling it. I think winner take all solution would have been solved in our country if we could get the fraud taken out. If the ABCs were not manipulated, if that had happened, we would have had a different president in 2007 than we did. And probably by 2013, that person might also have been out, or would have stayed until 2017, and we would definitely have had a change.
All right.
There was sufficient democratic rotation. I think these other rotations are artificial in my view. But the big question we're going to get with ward funds and that kind of things, that we are setting up executive roles that we have struggled in courts at the national level, whether, for example, MPs should have a CDF funds and attempt to be running their own projects. It's a very desirable thing. It's a very popular thing, but it had constitutional issues that we have been struggling with. Now we are going to get a situation in which, in the counties, in the ward, for the ward officer to run the ward officer to run the 15% of the allocation in their ward, they're going to need an administrative structure, not one that report to them. Now, what do you call them? Ward, at the moment we have what do you call this civil servant in charge of a ward at the moment, delegated from the office of the governor. We are going to have to be expanding the governor structure down to the wards to allow the political structure to decide on priorities where money should be invested, but not handle the money. So that will have some issues, but I think we shall sort those issues as we go along.
Okay.
I just don't think that where we are in many parts of Kenya, you solve it by doing the little things. You need to get an overall framework. You need to get those highways or roads that go, the big bridges, and those need to consolidate the money. So initially it's going to be problematic, but we can work our way through learning by experience. But the only thing I want to conclude on, Jesse, is some of our commentators on the platform today are not fully sensitive of the cost implications of running a government. And here we are complaining about the shortage of drugs in hospitals, poor maintenance of roads, our schools that are completely underfunded. They rely almost singularly on the CDF funding and so on, because money is not enough. And when recently, for example, the G20 allowed a certain reprieve in loan repayment, including China, which agreed, only then were countries able to get money.
True.
They had not got money since August. But when the 56 billion was delayed, then now 24 billion was transferred to the country. You can see where we are now. It's a very tight situation. So that we should not ignore. And when we say government has money, can only be if we pay the taxes. And I don't know if we will pay more. So what we should do is to force an efficient size of government on the country, not one that pleases everybody around the country. And if we do that, we are going to become partners of IMF forever, and life will be very hard indeed.
Okay.
You're going to see already when the new conditions come out. So I think we should be sensitive to the fact that size of government means somebody must be paying the taxes, and the councils that we want treated will go untreated because the monies are going out to pay the bureaucracy, and so we have to think along those lines.
All right. Musari Kahiga, give us your take on the raft of issues we've just talked about, but also an observation that I noted just yesterday. Most governors were present in the county assemblies, irrespective of their busy schedules. Would you be of the thinking that this might have been a sort of intimidation to the county members of county assembly one way or the other? Because I wouldn't be too encouraged to go against the tide if the governor, who controls funds, as we've mentioned right now, is seated right there.
Jesse, before I come to that, I want to perhaps agree with Honorable Munyasi that there are serious implications in managing government and the costs of management. But I think we should also look towards a time when we're looking at austerity so that we can be able to preserve our prosperity. That is to say that we should have a thinking that in the near future we're going to have to learn how to live within our means. I think the problem with the Kenyan economy, first and foremost, is how much we borrow. And there's no return for the projects which we engage in. And so we have to sit clearly, understand what we need to borrow, when and why. And beyond that, any reasonable person of adult mind should always learn to live within their means. Kenya is living without its means, and that's one of the problems which we have. You're talking about the governors being present at the county assembly, Jesse. I want to say this. First and foremost, it is a constitutional plebiscite. It's a constitutional moment in the country. The governors are Kenyans. They're the executive heads of those county assemblies. It would be slightly abnormal for them not to be present during such an important vote. So I think their presence there would be to the fact that they're the duly elected executive heads of those counties. And beyond that, I want to take a tease, Jesse. I think if there's anybody who should be intimidated inside a county assembly, it's governors. I mean, it's the MCAs who have been impeaching governors right, left, and center. So I would want to wonder if the governors were hauled in by the MCAs or they came to pass their loyalty to the MCAs, because within the last 5 years, it has been clear that the governors are completely under the behest and hold of the MCAs.
Okay. Well, interesting. Gentlemen and lady, I'd like us to give our final remarks quite briefly, 30 seconds if we could. I'll start with the lady in the panel. Martha Wangari, talk to us about your final remarks. But even as you do, we appreciate the fact that March 1st we'll see political rallies across the country in terms of popularizing the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. Holes have been poked on the civic education aspect, irrespective of 10 million copies promise to be produced. Talk to us about this as you conclude briefly.
I think the process has already rolled out, and it will be now open for campaign when the referendum time comes. But what I would appeal to our people, I think at the end of the day, we remain Kenyans, and it's very important. In fact, I was giving an illustration the other day. Honorable Musalia lost the mom. I don't think there is one big leader in this country who did not go. The president was there, the deputy president was there, the former prime minister was there.
All right.
So at the end of the day, we remain Kenyans. And I think they should, Kenyans should have an open mind, let them listen, let the secretary popularize it, let the copies be availed, because most people have still not seen this document at the grassroots.
Okay, interesting. PMG Njuguna, your final take?
Thank you very much. I think now it is time people got out of funerals and churches and go to boardrooms and social halls to educate people on what is in the BBI. And I also want to talk about very slightly, there is a provision amendment in item 50 of the BBI, combining 203 and current article 43 of the Constitution. Every Kenyan has got a right, economic and social rights. That being covered, the registratures, we have them, 3 of them in this conversation. The right of every individual now exists in the Constitution. It is combined with Article 203, which clearly talks about sharing of the national resources.
All right.
How well they are going to navigate that to benefit each individual is not easy, but it is critical.
All right, quite critical. I'll leave it at that point. Let's cross over to Musari Kahiga. Your final take, briefly.
First and foremost, I think I want to say I'm very proud of Kenyans. I'm proud to be a Kenyan today, that we have come across our ethnic divides, looked at a document and passed it for the posterity of future generations. Number 2, I want to encourage the BBI Secretariat not to delay. They need to push out education dissemination materials urgently. The grassroots leaders have read it. It's time for the document now to come to the grassroots. It's time for us to simplify the understanding of the BBI. Most of us here, perhaps sitting on this panel, would be able to understand and decipher the nitty-gritty and the details of the document.
Okay.
But we need to be able to do that for Wanjiku. We need to be able to divide it and give it a simple mechanism for understanding at the grassroots level. That's what's lacking, and it's needed immediately. But I'm proud to be Kenyan today.
Okay, Bunyasi Sakwa, final comment.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. This has been a very important moment for Kenya, but I think that the process has been diverted and captured by a political elite. I wished that the discussions had flowed freely through the grassroots. I think there's no need really to go to the vote. If we could just by affirmation say we all agree, and then we get a referendum to pass, so we can then confront the next state of things. There is no official no movement, as you know. There has been an attempt, and I agree with the Honorable Martha Wangari, nothing should be personalized. People take different views, and as Martha Karua said one time, she takes a view. If it happens to be similar to somebody else, it's only because somebody else has influenced. We all have brains. Everybody in this country has a brain, and they have their own perspective. And when they don't know, they might ask. So I think to personalize it, whether it would...
Okay, Sakwa Bunyasi alluding to the fact that psychophancy shouldn't be applied in delving deeper into this particular report. Sakwa Bunyasi right there, the Member of Parliament for Nambale constituency, joining us via way of Zoom. Thank you so much for your input, as well as Martha Wangari, the counterpart from Gilgil constituency. We appreciate your input right here. PMG Njuguna, political commentator, as well as Musari Kahiga, public policy analyst. Thanks for your time right here on Morning Express. We take a short break right now. When we come back, we still focus on the big issue, that is the Constitutional Amendment Bill 2020. But this time round, we take the legal aspect. What next for BBI, legally speaking? Do stay with us.
This is KTN.